Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Crip Campus. My name is Cindy. I use she, her pronouns. Who else do we have here with us today? Ash, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So I'm Ash Mitchell. I'm at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and I use they, them pronouns.
I'm Amy Ort. I'm at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I use she, her pronouns.
Great. Well, welcome. We are going to do this episode without Ryan for now, but I think we can handle it. I know what Ryan's disability perspective is, and we'll see if I can pull that off. We'll see what he says about that. So I first want to start out by saying that the reason I know who you all are is that I attended a conference. So I work at least part of the time in the educational development world, and we've interviewed some folks from that world on the show before. But basically, I attended a presentation where you were presenting about students with disabilities. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that study and, well, just give us the description of the study and sort of maybe say why it's important if you don't mind.
So this study is looking at students who have different types of disability status. So students who don't have a disability and is diagnosed, has a formal diagnosis, and also students who suspect they might have a disability but aren't sure, don't have that formal diagnosis. We're looking at differences in student outcomes for those students, and then also looking at how different kind of practices within the classroom are impacting them and how they impact them differently. So we recruited students from classes of faculty who were participating in another study that was part of this larger kind of package of studies that we're conducting right now, and asked them about kind of their experience in the classes.
And why were you doing that?
Yeah, I think in large part it's because we know based on national data that there is this large proportion of students that have a disability but do not have any form of formal accommodations on campus. And so we were really interested in trying to understand, what is the experience of those students, and importantly, are they being left behind by the courses that we're offering on campus? Because if they have a recognized disability, it's pretty likely that there's some form of accommodation that could be helping them out. Are there ways in which those students are being underserved by the way that our courses are set up? But also more broadly, it's just trying to understand what are the factors of course design and different things that faculty are doing in their courses that either support or maybe impair the learning of students on campus, so that we can go to faculty and say, hey, look, if you're gonna make some small changes in your course, these are the spaces in which we recommend doing it to really, really be helping our students with disabilities.
Mhm. Yeah, I think those undiagnosed students are a group of students that have traditionally been difficult to study because how do you find them traditionally? And so I think there's rightfully a lot of focus on how do we support students with disabilities who are seeking out accommodations who are registered. But there's also this group of students who are falling through the cracks completely of the system. And so wanting to get a better system of where are those students at, what's helping them, and what are their needs. And so this helped us understand that a little bit better.
I know from my work in this area sort of reasons why students might not be diagnosed and might not be seeking accommodations, but could you speak a little bit to that? It sounds like, I mean, some people could be listening and say, well, great, like maybe there are some students that don't have accommodation. So what's the importance of editing my whole class because I've never seen a disabled person in the class? So why should I make those accommodations when students can just go down to the disability resource office and register? Our listeners can't see the smiles on your faces, but I think this question is probably in our minds a lot, but I don't know if all faculty think that way. So could you give us a little explanation about what the deal is with students registering with disabilities?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, there's national data showing that probably about a third of students who have disabilities actually have a diagnosis and are registered. So we know we are missing the majority of students with disabilities. We don't know that they have a disability. They may not know that they have a disability. Then even among students who get accommodations, not all of those students actually are using the accommodations in the classes. In some cases, that could be because they don't need them. In some cases, it's because they feel self-conscious talking to professors about it. There is a lot of stigma attached to having a disability, unfortunately, in our society. And so having to go up to a person who's in a position of authority over you, who's judging you on your academic ability, and saying, I have this disability is really intimidating for an 18, 19, 20-year-old. For anybody, I think, of any age, that would be intimidating. So I think that's one of the big factors. I think there are several others, though.
Yeah, and I think another really big factor is the difference in how disabilities are treated in the K-12 system versus the college system. So in the K-12 system, you get a diagnosis, and then it is incumbent on the institution to make sure that you have everything you need, that you are supported every step of the way. But as soon as you hit the university system, it's all the students' responsibility. They have to find this office, go get registered, figure out what it is that they need, and even that change in process, there are students that graduate high school and didn't actually know all of the accommodations that they were getting along the way because it was handled by their parents in combination with the school system. So a lot of it is just the additional process and paperwork. So students may just go, you know what, that feels like a lot. I'm going to try it on my own. We're going to see how this goes. And part of it is also there is a very large proportion of students that become diagnosed while they are in college. So we see this particularly with, learning disabilities, as well as things like anxiety and depression, where they're being diagnosed during that time while they're at university, sometimes because of the giant shift from high school to the university system. And so those are students that may not know what's going on, don't have a diagnosis, haven't even figured things out yet. But if we set up systems in ways that are supporting their needs, they may never need to go through that entire process if we're supporting them properly.
I think another big factor is there's a large socioeconomic component to this as well, where to get an accommodation, you have to have documentation from a medical professional. And that can be very expensive to get in some cases. So I've know of cases with people who went and sought to get diagnoses as adults, and after insurance, they were still paying hundreds of dollars to have that testing done to be able to get accommodations. So it's just economically not feasible for some students to be able to afford the testing that's required to be able to get accommodations.
And universities often require the testing to have happened within the last 3, maybe 5 years. And so this student that was diagnosed when they were in elementary school and everything was fine up through the time they graduated is suddenly like, I don't have that documentation anymore. I don't even remember going through that diagnosis process, and they have to redo that entire thing. It's the hurdles that are involved in getting, official accommodations are sometimes very, very onerous in terms of both time and money.
Thank you. Okay, so what does this mean for faculty and what they actually do in the classroom? So you've just adequately explained that basically, like from a social justice perspective, putting the onus on the people with disabilities who might not know how to navigate the system, and the system itself might have these barriers, like you just mentioned, socioeconomic barriers and so forth. So now we're saying, okay, what about faculty putting the responsibility on us to just make courses that are more accessible? And so what does this mean, your study, what are the implications for what faculty actually do in the classroom?
Mhm. What I find to be some of the most interesting part of our data is, of course, sometimes really big changes can be helpful. But I was surprised by how much sometimes really small changes were really beneficial to students with disabilities and all students in the classes. So some inclusive lecture strategies really helped students a lot. So these were things like repeating a question back to the class when a student asks a question to the class, or starting with an outline and agenda for what they're covering in the day, or connecting key points with larger course objectives during class sessions. So these are things that they don't take extra work on the part of the professor, or not much. And they're things that can be done in class, but they can really have a positive benefit for students.
Yeah, and what was really cool about these data, is that the same relationship seem to exist between for students with disabilities as well as students without. So when faculty sit here and go, "Oh, why should I do all of these things just for this specific group of students?" It's like, guess what? You also are helping all of your other students. So it seems like across the board, these are really useful things to do, even though they come from this universal design framework that's really focusing largely on the experiences of our students with disabilities.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I
Yeah, and I
I
think
will say another thing that kind of stood out to me is that in terms of the different sort of classroom aspects that we were looking at, those with the sort of lowest relationships, so seeming to have the maybe least payoff, were the course materials kinds of things, like making sure that your documents are in an accessible format that a wider range of students are going to be able to use, which feels like an interesting connection to the Title II that we are all dealing with, where there's this really strong focus on, "Oh, all documents have to be accessible. This is the key piece that all of higher ed needs to focus on." And it's like, I mean, it's still useful, but maybe not as useful as some of these other sort of teaching techniques that may be easier, to get faculty on board with.
Mhm. Although I'm actually gonna disagree with Amy a little bit on this. Sorry, Amy. Every good collaboration has disagreement, right? We keep each other in line. For some of the course material items, I think some of that came as artifacts of the measure. I don't know that we really adequately addressed how kind of the things that we think of as being part of digital accessibility really impacted students. And we're going to have data that we're going to start analyzing in the next year or two that'll very directly get at that. We'll be looking at how accessible the courses are and then comparing that to student outcomes in those classes. But for this particular study, accessible course materials looked at things like allowing flexibility in how people submitted assignments. So things like, could they email them, submit them on an LMS, digital Dropbox, and then also using a course website, which among this sample, all the courses did. So I think that may be why we're not getting some of that correlation. I'm going to be interested to see in our future data when we're assessing this a little bit better what we find there.
Yeah, so it's still sort of murky and preliminary, but at this point, we can tell very clearly that some of the lecture and classroom practices are paying off, but it's less clear the degree to which the course materials are, yeah.
So do you think Title II is helping? And to be clear, I mean, we've said this a million times on the show, but Title II is the Department of Justice change in the law starting in 2024, but not being implemented fully until 2027 that says that materials have to be digitally accessible, public facing, and materials that face our students. We actually interviewed somebody last week on the show who said that at her HBCU in Nashville, the faculty can't access their courses unless they're accessible. And I thought that was a pretty interesting way to yeah, incentivize participation in this. But is Title II helpful in this work that you're doing, or does it focus too much on compliance and not really like access? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I wanna start by saying, like, unequivocally, Title II is a good thing. I am glad that it is happening. It is long overdue that we take these steps because most of these things are not hard, to implement, and ultimately, there's gonna be a pretty huge payoff in terms of making the world better for people with disabilities. On the other hand, I do worry that it's putting a little bit too much focus on the legal compliance and document, side of things because what I'm seeing from a decent number of the instructors that I work with is them just going, "I am overwhelmed by this. This is not being handled well. I don't see why I should have to do it, and so I'm just taking everything offline. We're going back to paper and pencil. All of my exams are gonna be handwritten. Students are gonna be taking notes by hand." And that is not good. That is a huge step backwards. A lot of the technologies that we're using are incredibly helpful, especially for students with disabilities. So it seems like maybe in the short term, we are gonna be experiencing some setbacks here, and, like, the students in particular that are going through college right now, might be facing some additional barriers that maybe weren't present in the few preceding years until this all sort of works its way out.
I think I agree with a lot of what Amy said. I very much support Title II, and I think one thing that sometimes gets lost about Title II that I always try to remind my faculty of is this didn't kind of come out of nowhere. Partially, this was because a lot of these things have been law for a long time, but it wasn't happening. People weren't doing it. And so now the law has kind of gotten a little stricter, guidelines have gotten tighter because students were still being disadvantaged in these ways. And so I think we're kind of culturally trying to catch up where ableism is so entrenched in the culture of higher ed that now we're trying to kind of dig out of that hole and get rid of those components, but it's hard when it's been so ingrained. So I think this is a great step forward in a lot of ways, but I get frustrated when people focus so much on the compliance aspect of it. And I think our study shows it's really those universal design for learning principles that are really helpful for students in addition to those accommodations. So I want to try to keep the focus on how do we be better by our students? How do we teach them more effectively? How do we help them be the best that they can be wherever their starting point is?
Yeah, and I think there is a strong analogy here with the original ADA. I work a lot with, our architecture folks, and so now, right, all of that is just part of the class. If you're gonna learn how to design a building, you have to learn all of the ADA principles that go into this in the same way as any other kind of safety codes. But if you look back at when the ADA was originally happening, it was incredibly contentious, right? And it was architects and builders that were saying, "This is impossible. There is no way that we can possibly incorporate this into everything that we're doing. We have to care about, people with disabilities everywhere." There aren't even that many of them, right? It's the exact same argumentation that we're seeing from faculty now. And so I think the fact that we can look back and say, okay, now everyone just treats this as a perfectly normal thing that we all just do, we're eventually gonna get there with Title II. Our faculty are gonna figure it out, our staff are gonna figure it out. It's gonna make things better for students, but I think we're just in that growing pains moment of everyone trying to figure out, "Oh, we have a law now. What does this mean for me?" Which is, yeah, rightfully challenging.
Yeah, my dream is in 10 to 20 years, just like, oh, this is just a normal part of being a teacher. We train teachers on this, that it just seems standard.
Yeah, no, I'm reminded of a colleague, coworker, and friend, all the same person, who has had this experience with making things accessible, making class documents accessible. And for years, we've talked about it, and he keeps coming up with the same instance. So I'm like, okay, this happened once or what? He's like, if I make it accessible, then some people say that's not the good format for me. And so I keep saying, yeah, it's almost as if accessible isn't a one stop, isn't doesn't mean just one thing. Yeah, welcome to access. You know, but he keeps on. And I remember we were just hanging out a few weeks ago and I said it again. And I said, yeah, just imagine how the students feel, and let alone your colleagues who need things to be accessible and they're not. Because somebody is worried about, well, which way, right? What's the one thing I need to do? And it's not so simple.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of my big frustration with the way that we're focusing on Title II right now, which is that it really seems to be just strip out all of the formatting and everything's going back to just pure text. We need to make everything as simple as possible because we're focusing on just make it so that a screen reader can access it. And it's like, okay, but a lot of that visual formatting is useful for a ton of people, and so can we think more creatively about how to build documents that work for everyone instead of just, removing all of the things because you don't wanna have to think creatively or try harder to figure out how to make a version that does work flexibly for everyone.
Yeah.
I think it's really all about providing choices and options so you can meet more people's needs. So rather than doing it this one way, okay, how can we provide it in a format that helps with this, provides 3 or 4 options that then everyone can access? And with technology, it's getting easier and easier to make those different types of options available.
Could you say a little bit more about that, honestly? What kinds of technologies are people using now that are making that easier?
Mhm. I think there's so many, and I'm sure there's many more that I don't know about. But some common ones that I've had people use a lot. For example, one that people use quite a bit at my university is we have access to Ally, which people are not familiar with it. It kind of checks courses for accessibility in the LMS. But another feature that it can offer is providing alternative formats. And so within that, you can go to content that is in a course, and students can just request it in a different format. It'll have a list of a whole bunch of types. So if they need something for Braille or a screen reader or a PDF, or they have all those options. And so they can be selecting the one that works for them. And the professor has to do no extra work for that. There's also things like different speech to text programs or text to speech that can be really helpful a lot. And I hear just increasingly people without disabilities using those for a whole variety of different ways to help with their workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. The number of people that are like, "Yeah, I like to have my web pages read to me instead of me having to look at them visually." Not because I need it that way, it just is more pleasant of an experience, or I'm able to think about it differently, or it allows me to listen and read at the same time, which keeps my attention focused a little bit better. Yeah, these are technologies that anyone can use. Chrome has a browser extension that will read all of your web pages to you, and it works for PDFs and things like that as well. So, yeah, these kinds of technologies are increasingly being built into the tools that we use. So if you have any kind of screen recording software, even Zoom, it now has the captioning ability, and it will create a transcript for you. So I think multimodal sort of document or content formats are increasingly becoming the norm, which is really great.
Thank you. Yeah. So, what you mentioned that you wanted to do some future research. This is the last question I have about your research, although you're free to speak about it as long as you want. Tell us about what you plan to do next with either this research, like a part two, or other similar research. And it may not be that you're doing it together, but what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to collect data from students as part of this. And we hope to get more data so we can do some more detailed analysis, maybe do some more intersectional analysis of, is this playing out differently for different groups of people? Along with this, we also are doing a faculty survey where we're assessing kind of attitudes and practices of the faculty that are teaching the courses that these students are in. And then we are also looking at their courses and rating them on how digitally accessible those courses are. So, the part of this that I'm most excited about coming up is being able to look at those 3 different types of data points and see, okay, how are they impacting each other? This is a longitudinal study, so we still have a few more years of collecting data, but I'm really excited to see what we find out in that final data.
Yeah, and I think I'm very excited to really look at the relationship between faculty and student perspectives, because there's a lot of research on there on each of these things separately, but not as much on how do faculty attitudes towards issues related to disability or universal design for learning, or just, course design more generally, impact student outcomes of their students with disabilities or students more broadly. So I'm really excited to bring those pieces of data together, and really start to understand what are the nuanced ways in which, yeah, our faculty are maybe impacting students in more subtle ways.
Do you have any guesses about what you'll find?
Well, we already know that students with disabilities say that their instructors are doing less kind of accessibility related things than students who don't have disabilities. And so I suspect that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't totally know where faculty are going to fall relative to that. But I think I know, at least it's my own experience as a instructor, I think I would have always described myself as being very friendly to people with disabilities and very inclusive. And I think as I gained more experience, I was like, "Ooh, yeah, I didn't do very well on that." And I learned things, and, it could be easy to beat myself up. I was like, "I didn't know." And after having those experiences, after learning more, I could do so much better. So I'm predicting we'll see that discrepancy.
I'm always reminded of a thing. I don't know if you know of Normala Araveles. She's a disability studies and education and many other things person. But I had her at a conference a few years ago that we put on, and there was this moment after her talk where somebody in the audience said, "Hey, growing up or as a teacher, I didn't learn this. I never learned this. How come?" And she had the best answer that I've adopted. And she said, "You know what? I don't know why you didn't learn that growing up, or even why you didn't learn that as an educator, but who benefits from you not knowing it versus who benefits from now you do."
That's a great point.
Yeah. The number of people that I've talked to, they're like, I feel so bad now. I can't believe there are all of these really simple things that I could have been doing that just nobody told me. And so, as much as we hear from faculty that are sort of grumbling and complaining and frustrating, I think we hear from a decent number that are going, "Wow, this is really great. I can see how it's going to help my students. I'm glad that somebody finally told me." So, yeah, there is hope.
I think I also understand the grumbling because I think there isn't good structural support for this in a lot of ways. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of faculty, this is just extra stuff kind of on their plate where they haven't had training. They weren't kind of expecting it, and they just have to make it work in already busy schedules. And I think it's really valuable, and we're not effectively teaching students if we're not teaching all of our students. But I really empathize with that and think that they have a right to be a little bit frustrated. But now we can do better, and now we can be teaching future generations, this is how you do this. And then building in accessibility from the start is so much easier.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
that's where my favorite people to work with here are grad students because they're just learning how to teach, they're building course materials for the first time, and you tell them, "Hey, by the way, you also need to do these specific things for accessibility," and they go, "Okay, obviously I'll do that because you told me to do it." So I think that's where as we get the younger folks and the grad students transitioning into faculty roles, and, like, the younger faculty are also the ones that seem to be the most like, "Yeah, okay, I'll just do the thing." So I think over time, we'll get there, and the attitudes will change as they realize this isn't once we can figure out the PDF problem, they'll realize that things are not as challenging as they seem.
For our listeners, if you're not aware that we don't mean younger faculty, meaning like what the calendar says. We just mean
Right.
people that aren't like hardened by the idea that they don't have to do it. They don't have to answer to anyone. And that's one of the challenges with Title II that I perceive is that if faculty see accessibility as someone telling them what to do, especially the longer you've been in the job, so it doesn't matter, young or old, but if you've been in the job for a long time, rarely does anyone tell faculty what to do because it doesn't go well. And so if you start to associate accessibility with someone making you do something, then you might be like more resistant to it. So I totally see your point that the fresher they are, if you will, like the more it's kind of like, oh, okay, this was part of my job. This wasn't extra work. We need those folks, right? But I believe that folks of any age and any length of service to the university can adopt the idea that this isn't extra work. It's just it takes a little conversation sometimes.
Yeah, and it absolutely should have said early career faculty because, like, a lot of the faculty that I was talking about are they've only been at the university for maybe 3 or 5 years, but they're calendar-wise a little bit older because they went out, worked in industry, came back, and this is sort of their way of giving back to the younger generations at the end of their career, and those ones are just as flexible and understanding and willing to work with accessibility as the ones that are, 25, 30 years old, fresh out of grad school, so yeah.
I think it's also an easier lift when you don't have
Mhm.
all your materials ready and the materials that you have perfected over decades all set. and you put all this work into them, and someone comes and be like, "You have to change it." I think that's a really kind of uniquely deflating experience that people who are earlier in their career don't have to deal with.
Absolutely, yeah.
So again, I still think it's important to do, and I think often it isn't as hard as it seems at first. I've seen with almost every faculty member I've worked with, once they start getting into it, they're like, "Oh, this isn't as bad as I thought." But it's hard when you put so much work and care into something and then need to go through and make another change.
You're reminding me. What I have a friend who just applied for a accessible education consultant or something like that job at a university, and she knows her part of it. But we were role playing for the interview because part of the interview was go do it, go do a mock training.
Yeah.
And as I was role playing the different participants, I was like, I'm fresh out of grad school. Oh, teach me. I want to learn. And then I was like, I've been here for 30 years and you can't tell me. And
Uh-huh.
it reacts. And she did. I thought she did a good job.
I think
Yeah.
that's part of why I left and made the transition from being a professor to going into instructional design, because I could feel myself becoming that old grumpy professor. And I was like, "Okay, I don't want that. I don't wanna be that hardened, angry, everything's terrible, I hate my students." And so made that shift, and for me, it worked out well. It's not for everybody, but
No, it's great. I'll tell you, it does sound exciting. Yeah. Thank you.
I enjoy it.
Yeah. The vacation leave and sick time are actually quite wonderful.
I think it's time to move on to our imagination section, which could also be the fun section. Ryan, do you want to
Oh,
us on that?
I got that right here. All right. Oh yeah, imagination, fun. Okay, is this the two? Yeah, this is you only have 2 minutes. Yes.
Actually, this one doesn't have a 2-minute time limit because some of them are a little bit longer. So I'll leave it up to you as the host of the fun section.
Leave these as open ended. So okay, take as long as you need to answer these. Here, imagine that you can immediately improve one, but only one, part of campus access tomorrow. That would be either disability services, classroom design, policy, culture, or technology. What are you picking first and why?
I feel like I have to pick culture because I get the sense that if we fixed the culture, we wouldn't need to put as much effort into the other spaces because the people that should be doing those things would just be doing them.
That is a good point. That is a good point. Yeah. I was gonna go with classroom design, just because I think that is what is impacting students most directly. That's what they're spending time with the most. And so because that is proximately closest to the students, that's what maybe might be able to help them the most right away.
Hmm. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Now I'm wanting to ask each of you what you think the other one will say, but maybe we won't do that.
Oh, we can do that. Yeah. We worked together a long time.
So, okay, Ash, Amy has a time machine. You have a time machine. When would you enact Title II's digital access rules? How would the present be different?
Let's see, how wait, can you post that in the chat, or yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
And so is the implication, Ryan, that the time machine goes back in time and then that's why the present would be different?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Okay. So it's more like when would you have enacted Title II digital access rules? Because the implication is that the present is different.
Yes. And for some reason, you can't go back 200 years and enact it then. It has to be in the
Sure. Give us the limitations of this time machine. Like it can go back to 1970 to present, or what are the rules?
somehow the time machine can only go back to precisely when you think the most impactful, not from the ground up change could have been made.
Mhm. Okay, what I think Amy would say in
Yep.
response to this question,
Complicated. What would Amy say?
It is, yeah. I think Amy would say as soon as kind of personal computing becomes kind of common. So as we're learning to do our things on our own personal computers, that we're also learning accessibility at the same time. And so that by now, it would just be that's how you work with computers. It would just be a natural part of the way that we interact with technology. How did I do, Amy?
That would be a really reasonable thing for me to have said. Actually, my immediate thought was, what year did Adobe Acrobat come out? Because I would like to specifically go back in time and fix PDFs.
Mm.
That is an excellent answer. Yes. Yes.
It's just gonna be like, I don't know, I do not know software, but like the root code or something. Ash would say with the time machine.
I suspect Ash would say exactly what Ash said Amy would say because I think we're pretty close to on the same page there.
Yeah, I think you're probably probably right.
Adobe? I'm reminded my wife grew up with like her first for access reasons, her first computer was like the Mac 2, Apple II
Yeah.
in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah, I had an Apple IIe, yep.
And she's like always we don't have one, but whenever we watch the shows that are back then, she's like, "Hey, there it is." And right, so for her, it's all and now, of course, her for the same purposes. There's word prediction software and things like that. I don't know what about PDFs could we go back and change.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about PDFs is that when they were originally created, like, it was a brilliant technology, right? The idea was we are gonna create this document format that anyone using any device can use. It works across operating systems. You don't have to have, a particular program on your computer to be able to use these documents. And that was great. It was innovative. The problem was they created the software and it seems to like they just stopped innovating. So by far the hardest document format to make fully accessible is a PDF because Adobe sort of owns them. And if you want to edit a PDF, you have to do it using their software. And it's just not user friendly. It's incredibly challenging to add accessibility features like fixing heading structures and adding list tagging and things like that. So I feel like if we could go there at the beginning and be like, hey, if you take this seriously and build your product in a way that it meets accessibility guidelines, then that would be in place all the way through now. And also, I think they were sort of used as a model and competition for so many other softwares that it would have just had a broad impact on software development more generally.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Which, but by the way, 1993, I looked it up, is when Adobe Acrobat came out.
I got news for you.
Well, and I think it's a great opportunity for Adobe to, if they can get some really great accessibility features and make accessibility of those documents easier right now, I think then they would have a really strong base to be coming from and would look like kind of heroes who saved the day at this point. So I'm hoping in 5 years, PDFs are just so easy to make accessible.
It would just be a more robust delivery and user experience. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know I knew that word. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you both. Now exit the time machine. What? I think you've spoken to this, but what changes faculty behavior more, and what do you think we can do with that? There's choices: incentives, accountability, peer culture, leadership pressure. Thank you, Cindy, for posting it, I think, in the chat, or student pressure.
I would probably say peer culture. I think that can have a really big impact on faculty, but I think also incentives as well. So probably a combination of those two. I'm going to cheat and pick two. I think leadership pressure tends to not work well with faculty because they're people who've made a career about thinking for themselves and thinking creatively, and leadership doesn't always have a lot of sway with a group of people like that. I think student pressure can influence some faculty a lot.
Right.
I think more teaching focused schools, liberal arts universities, that can play a really big role, but I don't think that's consistent. So at R1s, they're not having as much time with students. it isn't as much of their workload. And so I think just isn't as salient, doesn't play as big of a role.
Mm.
I am going to disagree on the leadership pressure side of things, mostly because I've seen instances where if leadership leads by example, right? Like leadership pressure can't be me telling you that you have to do this thing. But if it's leading by example and talking about here are the benefits for students and here's why we're doing this in the first place. And so I guess good leadership pressure, I would say, can be the strongest force on this list, but it takes really high quality leadership that is often absent in academia. So, yeah.
I think that's a good point.
And so I think that's where all of these are sort of depending on, as Ash said, what is your university situation? Yeah.
Because I do think it's different for every school.
Yeah.
Although I think if I could magically give out one solution, it would be course releases to every professor. I think that would have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
Because in some other data are what faculty say almost universally is more time is what they need with this. And so I think having a course release where they have more time or a release somewhere in their load, I think would go a huge way in improving accessibility.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm reminded of the fall quarter. I had a guest speaker in like week 3, and he turned on this little PowerPoint, and it was live captioning what he was saying. I said, wait a minute, what are you doing? And it's go, it's pretty easy. And it took me, that was week 3. It took me to winter quarter to figure out how to easily and seamlessly turn it on. But now I do it all the time, and I've already had people say, "Oh, I love that." And even wanting to do it took me 7 weeks to figure it out, of trial and error, and now it's the easiest thing in the world. But yeah, that little bit of fun is we need it. We need it too, right?
So the one addition I'd make to that is we could give every professor a course release and a good instructional designer. Then things would be accessible. I think we'd see such a huge improvement.
I suspect you're right. Thank you. Well, thank you. So now I want you to switch gears a little bit here. So now let's take 5 minutes for a fill in the blank section. I will ask each of you at least one question and ask you to fill in the blank. Are you ready? Andy, can you set the timer?
I certainly can.
Okay, count us down. Ready?
3, 2, 1, lightning round.
Amy, self advocacy helps students blank.
Help students get what they need in order to be successful at the university.
Wonderful. Ash, self advocacy challenges students.
To develop strong metacognitive skills.
Amy, self advocacy helps faculty.
Communicate with students about their specialized educational needs.
Ash, self advocacy challenges faculty.
To think more creatively. Need to
Amy,
develop more solutions.
Amy, self advocacy becomes problematic when.
Students don't have the skills or knowledge to know how to best advocate for what they need.
Ash, the last 5 questions leave out.
How do we help scaffold self advocacy for students and teach it to them as a skill?
Amy, in higher education contexts, diagnoses.
Create unnecessary barriers and art artificial groupings of, what I guess an artificial structuring of what it is that students need in terms of faculty support.
Genuine accessibility is, means, or feels like.
Is having real equity in terms of the educational experience our students can have and feels like just a warm fuzzy.
I'm gonna break our own rules. And Amy, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think genuine accessibility just feels like belonging, like everyone has a place and can be their full selves.
Student choice,
Yeah.
I'd add too. Yes.
Great. Okay. How much more time do we have?
Well, we have exactly the amount of time needed for our new segment called Curb Cut. And in Curb Cut, we give our guests 2 uninterrupted minutes to take us deeper into what they're interested in or say whatever you'd like for 2 minutes. Since there are two of you, I guess you're going to have to share because the clock says 2 minutes and 10 seconds right now. So uninterrupted, we won't say a darn thing. Anyone can start.
I think right now, because in addition to working on accessibility stuff, I spend a lot of time thinking about AI and developing resources there. And so what I'm starting to really think more about is how do we use these AI tools to really better support our students, particularly our students with disabilities? Because on the one hand, I think I have a lot of fear around it making education worse and students using it for cognitive offloading and not actually learning critical thinking skills. But I also think there are a lot of ways in which it can be highly beneficial for students in terms of being able to track their assignments and organize things that they need, providing alternative formats for students that need them. And so that's a space that I'm really, really digging into at the moment.
Yeah, I think for me, this is almost the opposite of Amy in some ways, in that I really think about the human element of it a lot. And I've just, heard so many stories about people about how accessibility has helped them, or the way that I've seen accessibility create barriers for students as well. And so I think just really understanding how that feels and how alienating that can be. And then these students get sort of blamed for not being good enough when they were set up to fail, really. I think also this is something that Amy and I have also worked on as well, is really being mindful of it's not just our students who have disabilities. This is true of staff. This is true of faculty. This is a human thing. Students will go out into the workplace and they will be able to have accommodations in the workplace too. So, not forgetting some people within this. It's great that we're focusing on students, but this goes beyond just students.
You stopped right at 2 minutes. It sounds like Curb Cut is ideally set up for you two. So thank you so much. We just gave you a moment to share whatever you thought about. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out today?
No, I really, really appreciate y'all inviting us here. I love just interacting with other people that are deeply thinking about the disability space in higher ed because I think it doesn't get the attention that it deserves, and in some ways, Title II is bringing attention to all of the wrong aspects of it. So, yeah, podcasts like this are just doing a really great job of thinking about this in a really great way.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you both so much for your great work on this.
Yeah, so thank you again so much. We really appreciate you being here.
We do. But I have to say, I just wonder, is this stuff really?
You know what the music means.